So we'll start off in our auth component folder. We'll go to the auth form and we'll fill in the inputs that this form would be. And I'm keeping this general because this form is going to be used for login and sign up. Why could I reuse this for both functionalities? How come I don't need to make a login form and a sign up form?
It's going to look the same as it.
Yeah, the only thing that's different is what happens when you click submit. The inputs, everything else are the same. So why not just reuse the component, I ask. Take this and we'll make one for password. And if you're interested, there is a type password that will make the little dots show up instead of the letters when they're typing. It's just a user, a nice effect, but we're going to be using text so we can see what we're typing. And we want this to be dynamic as well because one is going to say login, another button is going to say sign up. So this is going to be a prop we pass down eventually. Let's put the on submit on the form. Okay, in our auth container, I'm going to import auth form from the auth form. This is also nice because since they're in a shared folder, I don't have to really worry about paths. Everything that uses each other is pretty close as far as imports are concerned. And we're going to use an auth form here and an auth form here. One for login, one for sign up. We'll have to build a little toggle to make sure that these, you can choose one or the other. And since we're not using render props, we're going to have to build all the functionality into here. It won't be that bad. But now we're ready to build in the functionality of context, then we'll come back here and plug everything in. So, context. Now, if you go through the write-up, they combine everything into one context called app context that has the to-dos and the user information. For the sake of practice, I'm going to split these up and have or at least call this something different. I'm going to call it the user provider. But if you're following the write-up, it's going to be app provider. So what do we think the user provider is going to maintain as far as state data? Username. Eventually, hopefully not. We don't want the password on the front end. But yes, at first it will. So we're going to save the user, the entire user object. So we have all their data, minus the password once we get to part 3. But what else are we sending to the front end when they log in or sign up, other than the user object? Token. We're going to save that as well. And this is going to be our user state. All right, so what are the interactions we need to build for this user? There's 3 main ones. 2 of them are defined by the routes. Login and sign up. So we're going to have a sign up method. We're going to have a login method. And we're also eventually going to have a log out method. These are the main action words that this provider is going to maintain. Well, we need to make our context. So const user context. We create the context, and then we return the user context.provider wrapped around, we'll just put it around our app component. And the value this will provide, pretty much everything from this. So we're going to say, give me everything from this .state. We want the user object and we want the token. And we also want our methods. And I'm doing all this first because it gets a little frustrating later on if you build a method and forget to add it to the provider. And you start changing your logic so you think it's broken when really you just haven't provided it. So I try to do this first thing. Look out. Okay. And then we'll build our consumer higher order method. So we're ready to go. So export const, what would we call this higher order component or this higher order method? It should start with a certain keyword. With user, I think would be good. It accepts a function or a component as its primary argument, and that function returns another function that can take props. When this function is called, it grabs the user context consumer, which provides us the provider's value as a function that we can then pass to our whatever component or function was passed in, making sure it gets everything from the provider and everything from the props we pass in. All right, so this is the bare bones is set up. We can, I'd maybe go set up the index.js to make sure it knows about our context. Yeah, if the stuff that isn't new information, I will be kind of moving through, so please do stop me at any time with questions. I'll let you know if we'll cover it later or not. Okay, back to context. So let's work on signup. I'm going to need to import Axios. And what type of request was our signup? Axios.post. What is the endpoint? Okay, so the same endpoint we were playing with in Postman, and then we need to send a second argument, the credentials, the username and password. Well, how is this method going to know what the credentials are if it's going to be way over here in our auth component using these forms? It's going to receive it as a function parameter. So when we call signup, we're going to pass the state object from our form to this method so it has the username and password, and then we'll forward that in the post request. Now, then it will come back with a response or an error, which for just now we'll just console log, but we will be changing this. Okay, so what is inside of my response object if this works? Token and user. So I'm going to destructure both of these out. And now if you needed to know what the response is, where could you look in your own code to see what res.data should be? How do I know what this is? I go to routes, find the route that I'm interacting with. I need to find what it's res.sending. Whatever is in this these parentheses is response.data. Since I'm sending an object as response.data, response.data is going to have a .token and a .user. So that's how I can confidently say, great, give me those two items from the response. Well, as soon as that comes back, for now, we will just set state and save them both in state. How come I don't have to do the key value pairs again? What's the ES6 mechanism that's allowing me to say this? Object literals. If you don't want to be literal, then be redundant. But literals are nice. All right, and there is our signup method for now. So we need to go implement the signup form and test this and see if we can. First and foremost, what I'd actually probably do is comment these out in console log response to make sure I'm getting it. But it is being provided, so we'll go to our auth container, and I'm going to have this consume the context, so it has access to the methods. I'm going to import my with user from context user provider. For now, I'm gonna just work on one form. We'll make sure this works. So what are the inputs I'm gonna need for this form? Username, password. We're gonna do a handle change, which won't be any different than any handle change we built before. So we're gonna take the name and the value from the event target and say this dot set state, update the target's name to the target's value. Following so far? Okay, then I'm going to call this, instead of handle submit, we're going to need two handle submits because one's for the sign up form, one's for the login form. And we're not refactoring right now, so I'm going to call this handle sign up submit because we'll eventually add a handle login submit as well, which just prevents the default for now. Now we have the pieces for our form, so let's pass those all down as props. Say username, this.state.username, handle change, and the handle submit for this form will be this.handle signup submit. Why wouldn't I want to call the prop name handle signup submit? Yeah, then this form is being specific for only signing up. I want to be able to send down the same name prop, just have it refer to a different method depending on the form it is. So auth form is receiving what it needs. We'll go into the auth form. I'm going to take those props or destructure those props out to get username, password, handle change, and handle submit from props, and then tie them to their appropriate handlers. But then with this, we also want the form to say sign up on sign up or login on login. So I'm going to accept one more prop called button text and say display the button text. So now I can give this one more prop, button text, that is sign up. The 2 words or 1 word, I always debate. Okay, we're doing 2, so I can't decide. Okay, so I'm going to load this up. Notamon server.js, and through our code still works from yesterday. It does. Then we'll go to the front end, npm start. I haven't tested this yet, so let's see what happens.
That's a lot of code.
Well, I haven't used this just yet. So we're going to come in and tie the sign up into this, but we need to make sure our auth page is available when our app opens. And right now, all I'm displaying is app. So I'm going to replace this with a switch statement. We're going to start off with routing because single page application, we're going to need some front end routing. And we're going to make the home page. This website's going to require user authentication to get into. So I'm making the home page the / render the auth component. So by default, you should land on the auth component. Oh, yeah, that's fine. That's the router props match location history. Why am I getting this error though? This is an interesting one. What am I missing?
Yeah, that's part of it.
What's that? I got switch and route imported here correctly. How come it doesn't know what they are? I have installed it. What am I missing here? Yeah, it's like trying to consume my user provider without providing. Browser router is a provider, so we need to wrap it around our app so that route and switch will work. Browser router, browser router. Hey, the form, look at that. How cool. Doesn't work yet, but it will shortly. Okay, so now with all this setup out of the way, we are on our app.js. When we hit the home page, it's going to load our authentication page, which is showing one auth form, which we see here. When they click submit on this button, what method should be firing? So this will be fired, but what does this need to call? Sign up. And it needs to pass what they typed in these two inputs, the credentials. Well, we're providing this method, and auth is consuming that provider. So how could I call the sign up method here? How do I have to refer to it? Can I just say sign up? Hopefully the failed to compile is showing you no. It doesn't know what sign up is. So where does this actually put this method? Where does context put your data when you consume it? In props. So this .props.signup. Great. And what is signup expecting again? Credentials, which is this object. Fortunately, our state is only managing that right now. I'm going to split it up just so we can see it because we're going to add a little bit more later. I'm going to say creds equals an object where it has username from this.state.username and password from this.state.password. And then it passes these credentials to the method when it calls it. Now we can test because we're actually plugged into our provider. This will receive it. It will do the authentication request, and then we're console logging the response. Let's see if we can break things. So username A, password A is already taken. So let's test that first. Let's test a unsuccessful sign up and see if we get the right error message here. Sign up with a status of 404, not found. What could be my issue? How come I can't find my endpoint? This is for sure the right endpoint. And my server is running. I've missed a vital step though. How would I check if the front and back end is connected? Oh, let's see if I put a proxy in here. Nope. Just, running into errors because you're bound to see them. And I completely forgot about this, to be honest. So, hey, we're connected. But weirdly enough, if I sign up, it still doesn't know where it is. But I added the proxy. Now, the problem with the package JSON, this only happens when you first start up the server. So now I've got to stop my front end, start it back up again. And now the proxy will take effect. All the little things. So now let's try again. Sign up. Aha, 400, bad request. Can't see my error there though, so I'm going to console.dir it to see if that changes. You can see more about the error. All right, there we go. Error object. It has an error.response.data.error message. That username is already taken. So that is how my custom errors are making it to the front end. Error.response.data.error message. And why is it called this? I told it to call it this over my server. When I said, when you receive any errors, send it back as an error message, as the error.response.data.error message. Wonderful. That worked out nicely. Hey, so we know the error works. Let's try to log in successfully or sign up successfully with a BB. Oh, that was quick. So line 18 is console logging. That's my console log of the response. I look in, it has a .data with a .token and a .user. I have my stubs. Now I know this works. I don't have to worry about this route anymore. It worked. Hooray. So let's get rid of the console log and start using it correctly. Let's do this. Okay. We've got the sign up going, getting everything. All right. So now if I were to sign up again, new user, C, I should be able to now go into my React state in DevTools and see the user object and token saved there. So I'll drill down to the provider, I'll look at the state, and sure enough, it's saved. What's going to happen to this though if I refresh my page? I am now no longer authenticated. Bummer. We don't want that. We don't want the user to have to log in every time their page refreshes. So where could I store this data that even if the page refreshes, I could still have access to it? That's not my database. Local storage. So when sign up or login occurs, once we get this response.data, before we save it in state, we're going to save them in local storage. So we'll set item token to be our token. And since it's a primitive data type, we don't have to worry about changing its format. We can just send it to local storage. But for the user is a complex data type, which local storage needs it converted. So what do we need to convert it to? Yeah, so we have to say JSON dot, what's the method that turns it? Stringify our user. Awesome. Let's sign up one more time as DD, sign up, application, and there we go. Now it's in local storage as well. We can even see our user object here, nice and pretty. Interestingly enough, though, this isn't enough. Because even though it's in local storage, when I refresh, this still goes away. So there's one more step I need to include. Now it's gone, even though local storage still has it. Yeah, so the state here, it says resetting to this. I don't want it to reset to this if these exist. So I'm going to do a do-ary statement, the and, or the or statement, I mean. I'm going to ask if there is a local storage.get item user, then use that. But if it doesn't exist, then start it off as an empty object. But this is going to come down as JSON, so we have to json.parse what it returns if it returns anything. So set the initial state of the user to whatever's in local storage if it exists. If not, start it off as empty because they have not logged in yet. We need to do the same for token. Say local storage.get item token or an empty string. And again, since this is a primitive data type, we don't need to parse it. And this is nice because notice now my React state has that data again. When the page refreshed, it grabbed it from local storage and kept me logged in. Any questions on the sign up or what we're doing here? We're here.
I'm guessing the correct password.
Yeah, part 3, we're going to remove it. It'll never be a part of this object once it makes it front end. We're handling that all in our server. Well, what is the difference between a login and sign up as far as the front end is concerned? Yeah, it's this exact same block of code. No differences whatsoever except one vital difference. The path. We changed this word to login. Now we have our login method. This is where copy and pasting is your friend. As long as you get it, all you got to change is this, and now you have your login route to test as well. But we don't have the functionality yet, so we got to go do that. We got to go to our auth page and introduce the login form. What is the difference between this form and the login form? The button text and the handle submit. So I'm going to copy this as well. Change the button text to login and change this handle sign up submit to handle login submit and write that method. What's the difference between this and handle login submit? That word. So once you build this once, getting the full functionalities is pretty straightforward. It's the same logic, just different methods. Credentials is not defined. Right, I didn't tell it to receive anything. Okay, now we can test our login form. We're doing them side by side here, which looks a little interesting because they both have the same handle change, right? So typing in one will update the other. We'll fix this. Let's test the login form. Let's try to log in as someone that doesn't exist yet and see either if we get a response or an error. So I'm pretty sure EE doesn't exist. We'll log in and check the console. Forbidden, that's good. It's getting an unauthorized error, not an unfound error. We'll go into the error.response.data.error message and see username or password are incorrect. So we're getting our little message from the backend that we could save here. Right, now let's try a successful login. AA. Get a response.data with our user and a new token. So we can uncomment this and we're good with login and sign up. Now it's worth mentioning now because we're going to be working around with our components for a bit. What would logout need to do? What is telling our front end that the user is logged in, first and foremost? The token, that's the big piece. We have a token in state and in local storage. But if we remove it from local storage, the page will refresh and also remove it from state because it will have nothing to pull from. So all we need to do on logout is say local storage.remove item token, local storage.remove item user, and then say this.set state, make the user an empty object, make the token an empty string. And we've cleared any evidence that they've been here, it'll log them out. Okay. Any questions on these methods before we go adjust this to not be so weird as far as typing in both at the same time? Great. So what could I do to say show this one or only show this one? A ternary, but what would I need for that ternary? A toggle. So I gotta introduce a toggle to this form. And hopefully you're starting to see why render props are so cool. Auth could be a functional component if I was using render prop toggles and forms, because all of this would already be done for me. And the toggle, all I'd have to do is this. But we need a toggle. And this is why I broke creds into its own object, because we're adding one more piece of state here. We'll call it toggle. Starts off as false. And we'll make a method called toggler that switches it back and forth. Needs prev state and set the toggler to the opposite of its previous setting. Oh, not toggler, toggle. Toggle and toggler. I'll get over it. Right, so both of these need to be in that ternary statement. So I'll open my JavaScript land here. I'll close my JavaScript land here. Tab these over. And then I'm going to ask my question. If not this.state.toggle, if it's false, because it's false by default, then show my sign up form. Else, show my login form. And we couldn't see the dramatic effect because we were full screen, but now we have one. But how do I get to login? Huh. So I need to give the user ability to toggle between forms. What's a way that you've seen that on sign up login forms? Those are different. Yeah, it's like a little button you can click on that says, you know, do you already have an account? You know, you could do something like that. You could have a tab at the top that lets them route between the two forms, however you want to set it up. We're going to use just a little P tag that says already have an account or not a member. And I don't want to have extra divs nested in here. I'm about to add a P tag below this user form, but this is going to break because now I'm trying to return two adjacent JSX elements. So what could I wrap around this that's not a div, but would still keep that rule safe? A fragment. Fragment. Oh, it's so cool. Yeah, I just decided to shout it out as well. Fragments are nice because this div will now be the parent div for both of these forms. So styling just got a lot easier. All I have to say in here is give this a class and then style any forms that are direct children of it. And both of these forms will be styled the same. They have the same shared parent. So I'm going to do that on this one as well. Fragment. Does anyone not know what a fragment is, and can we cover it if so?
You still just returning the div without the fragments.
Yeah, this is the only thing actually being returned. These get stripped out at runtime. But it gets you past the adjacent JSX elements rule, so you don't have to nest divs on divs. Like the alternative to this would be putting another div here.
Well, but I thought because you're returning the parent, most parent div, line 6.
Yes, but since this ternary statement is returning two elements depending, they have to have a shared wrapper. So
Okay.
yeah, if I get rid of these, for example, we'll get the adjacent JSX elements rule. So an easy fix is just to throw in some fragments. So for sign up, we'd say maybe already have an account. And if they on-click here, all we need to do is call our this.toggler so that this one will show up. But if this one shows up, don't have an account.
I think it's just like, so ternary can only return one thing.
Yeah, ternary is it's like the implicit return of an arrow. It can only be one statement.
Like the ternary that's bugging here, because if you don't use the fragments, then you'll return two things if it's true, or you'll return two things
Yeah.
if it's false.
Yep. And it reads it as an adjacent JSX rule. But okay, so now we already have an account. Now we're on the login. Now we're on the sign up. So I can say sign up as AA or log in as AA. They're using the same state, so it doesn't erase my text when I toggle between the forms. Pretty big component, right? But is the logic consumable? Form logic, just with an extra handler, and toggle logic. And then we make sure that they can view one page versus the other, or one form versus the other, while also giving them the ability to toggle. We'll also add one more tag here later that shows the error message if they fail to log in or fail to sign up. Okay. Let's do one last piece here. We'll take a little break. Let's go to the nav bar and actually implement the logout button. Should only show up if they're logged in. So in my app.js, I'm going to put the nav outside of the switch so it shows on every page for now. But I need nav to know whether or not the user is logged in. So what do I need to introduce to my app component? Context. I need to pull in I need to consume my user provider. So with user from context user provider with user, And now I have a this.props.token I can send down. Since I may be using it a lot, I'm going to deconstruct it in my render statement. So give me the token from this.props. So we can then pass the token down to the nav bar. And this, everywhere in our site, the word token refers to logged in or not logged in. So now it's going to receive it as a prop. And we're going to display a button that says log out. So nav needs one more prop from our provider. It needs our logout method. So that our nav bar can receive that as well and on click to log out, which I'll destructure again. Now this is a problem though. My logout button is showing and I'm not logged in. So how could I say only show this if we're not logged in? What is a question I could wrap this in? If token, then show button. Sure. So let's wrap this in brackets so we can work in some logic and ask if there is a token, then show this button. Now this is a little something. This isn't showing it right because we haven't routed away from this page yet. We don't have other routes. But notice when I click log out, right now we have a local storage. We have everything in local storage, token and user. When I click log out, it's going to refresh this page and this is going to disappear because the token is gone. And there is our login, logout, and sign up.